E3 2022 is right around the corner, or at the very least, the typical time frame in which E3 would have been hosted is right around the corner. But it seems to be like E3 is not going to be happening this year, and alongside that, we're still waiting to see what Nintendo's plans are going to be for this big summer event. So in this video, I want to try to tackle the question as to what should Nintendo's plans be for this big E3 time window that we should be expecting some type of major direct, but more importantly, what can we expect as a whole since everything has kind of gone haywire when it comes to actual digital presentations. So the time frame usually has been between July 9th and July 12th for there to be some type of E3 presentation in previous years, with only 2020 being the most recent one where they basically had to cancel it due to the pandemic. But since then, pretty much the Summer Game Fest has kind of become the opening summer period event, if you will, where Jeff Keighley tries to host and put together some presentation, not necessarily focusing on just PlayStation, Xbox, or even Nintendo games, but just kind of like in the industry as a whole, showcasing a little bit more of a wide variety of games, which a lot of it sadly ends up being like PC games, which a lot of people don't really end up necessarily caring much for at the end of the day. We do know that they're going to be hosting another one of those presentations on June 9th, but in typical fashion, Nintendo is most likely not going to be showcasing anything in one of his events. They usually kind of do stuff for the Game Awards at the end of the year, and even that has very kind of been dialed back in the most recent years since Reggie left Nintendo. We also know that there's going to be a Tribeca Games presentation on June 10th, but those are for indies usually. We also know that there's going to be a Wholesome Games Direct on June 11th. And you can start to see kind of like those dates one after another, they start to build up. On June 12th, there's going to be a rather big Xbox and Bethesda presentation, which is going to be showcasing a whole bunch of Xbox first-party games, and of course, a lot of Bethesda Starfield-related information, which seems to be like that game was recently delayed or something along those lines. So, we'll just have to wait and see as to what happens. There's also going to be the Futures Game Show on June 12th as well, the PC Game Show on June 12th as well, and Days of the Developers on basically the Summer Game Fest event version, which still has not been dated. Usually around that time window, we also get EA Play Live, and Ubisoft has some sort of presentation, but we're still not sure as to what it is going to happen with them. EA did say they're probably not going to be hosting one this year, or it's going to be towards the later part of the year. Ubisoft, as of the time of this recording, has not confirmed anything right now. So all that leaves is, of course, Sony and Nintendo. And Sony usually plays by the beat of their own drum. Lately, they've kind of gone the Nintendo way, where they just do things whenever the heck they feel like it. Mostly because the PlayStation 5 is extremely popular, and even the lack of games is not going to stop anyone from buying into the hype for when it comes to that console. Now, when it comes specifically to Nintendo, we do know that they typically host a digital presentation in the form of a Nintendo Direct. Followed right after, which is the thing that they have kind of like traditionally done, is one of those Treehouse presentations, which takes up about 2 to 3 hours depending on the year, and they go ahead and showcase a whole heck of a lot of gameplay, usually in about 30-minute chunks for upcoming title releases. Now, we know that this year Nintendo has a rather stacked lineup. I believe that before E3's season is supposed to be, we do know that the Fire Emblem Three Fates Warriors game is supposed to launch right after the E3 window. We know we have Mario Strikers launching as well. We have Splatoon 3 right after that. I believe that's in September. We also have Xenoblade Chronicles right around that time as well. I don't remember the specific date. And we should also have Advance Wars, which has been delayed now, I believe 2 times. Not because the game is like in bad development hell or anything along those lines. We just know that that game, specifically due to the whole war situation with Russia and Ukraine, has been delayed to not pretty much offend people due to the presentation of war in that game. And we also know that Bayonetta 3 is scheduled to be launching this year. One of the games that we have not heard much about since it was revealed is the two brand new Pokemon generations games. Those are going to be introducing a brand new generation of Pokemon. A lot of information is going to be presented whenever they decide to give us more details than that. And I presume that Nintendo, if they host a direct, which presumably they will, around this time window, they should be showcasing more of that game as well. We're also expecting to hear information on presumably this year's Zelda title. Every single year, Nintendo has something Zelda related, either a remake or a re-release of an old game. A lot of people are expecting some sort of Wii U port of all titles that were available on that console. At the end of the day, they could also just go the reroute of a remaster or a remake like they did a few years ago as well. At the end of the day, Zelda is a big franchise for them. We're just going to have to wait and see if they decide to go that. And then, of course, there's the new games, which, of course, those are most likely going to be for 2023, including Breath of the Wild 2, which we already know has been delayed so far. I think the more interesting conversation lies when it comes to third-party support on the Nintendo Switch 5.5 years into the system, and what should we be expecting when it comes to major support from some like big key franchises, and specifically publishers who are moving on, realistically speaking, and no one could really hold it against them, that they're moving forward to basically next generation. We're starting to see Square Enix put a lot of effort, even though they are making dodgy decisions when it comes to selling off some of their IPs and even some of their studios for that matter, with the most recent situation with the Tomb Raider development and a couple of their other games, Deus Ex and stuff like that. They sold off those IPs. Square Enix is mostly moving forward to basically next generation, supporting PlayStation 5, Series X, and the new generations of video cards that are coming to PC. They're basically relying heavily on big key franchises, story-driven, first-person games. They know that those online experience games are not doing very well for them. Just look at Babylon's Fall. That is not going to cut it. The same thing with the Marvel's Avengers games. That just simply didn't necessarily cut it. So this is why I believe they're going to start focusing more on big, key, pivotal first-party games, kind of like Final Fantasy 16, which is expected to be on PS5, presumably before the end of the year. We're still waiting to see more details on that. When it comes to Nintendo, we know that they're going to have a couple of things for them in the form of smaller indies, maybe even remasters in the form of Live Alive. We see that set to be released later in the year. We have a couple of other smaller titles, but when it comes to big key Octopath Traveler investments kind of a game, we just recently saw Triangle Strategy. That game sold extremely well, but when it comes to Square Enix, they kind of expect more than what they really, should be expecting. So we'll just have to wait and see if they develop more exclusives for the Switch. We know that Capcom has Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. If you see my channel, you know that I cover that game quite a bit. That is going to be a massive game for Nintendo, regardless of how good the quality of that game is going to be. On the Nintendo Switch is presumably going to be the leading console once again, because the PC version of the game is still not up to par when it comes to just the way Steam handles matchmaking. It's just a whole situation. I've made a couple of videos on that in the past. And, the Nintendo Switch has the biggest audience, I believe, 7.5 million, where PC is still hedging around 1 million or so. So, they're still not ready there. So Sunbreak, presumably on Switch, is going to be extremely gangbusters, the game of the summer, if you will, if you're not big on Strikers, which is also going to be another big game for the Switch as well in the summer. We're seeing things like Fall Guys finally also ready to drop onto the Nintendo Switch. Epic has kind of been really trying to get that game out there. It's finally going to be coming free to play, and is going to be coming on Xbox and other consoles as well. So, they're making a big push there. We're also still waiting on Genshin Impact. Presumably, MiHoYo has said that that game is still in development. So, presumably, if we end up seeing it this summer, it could be that it's finally ready to drop on the fall on the Nintendo Switch, and hopefully drop on Xbox as well and other consoles. That game kind of needs to be everywhere, since it is free to play, and being locked onto PlayStation is not doing them any favors. Not that they're hurting for money, I should say, but putting it on Switch should be a big kind of like no-brainer, and they have confirmed that it was just a matter of time. There's a lot of discussions. I should have mentioned this before in the Capcom section that there's going to be a brand new Resident Evil coming to the Nintendo Switch. It's not going to be Resident Evil 9 or anything along those lines. It seems to be more of a smaller kind of like spin-off Resident Evil game. We're still waiting to see as to what that else is going to turn out to be. But, you know, the rumors are there nonetheless. And there's, of course, the big Sonic game that is expected to be dropping at some point before the end of the year if it's not delayed, and that game has also been kind of rumored for presumably the Nintendo Switch. We're not necessarily sure of that as of yet. Sega has not confirmed consoles, but if it's looking to be as let's say expansive as they're making it out to be, perhaps it might end up skipping the Switch altogether. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's about all the information that I wanted to go over when it comes to Nintendo's big E3's ideas, plans, and expectations. We still don't necessarily know when the presentation is going to be, but when that gets confirmed, you know I'm going to be talking about it. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.